Hey folks, this is Drew with another episode of the Building Great Experiences podcast. Today I have David Wachs, who is founder at a company called Handwritten, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about it. But super excited! They provide handwritten notes at scale for companies to provide that personalized touch. So David, welcome to the show.
Drew, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So today's conversation, we're going to be discussing how those handwritten touches provide a great, customer experience. You and I had a good conversation about a month or so ago, just talking about, your business and how you're elevating experience. So we'll be covering that topic. But before we get down that path, I would love for you to just talk a little bit about yourself. I'm big on origin stories. So like, how'd you get into this industry? Some of the backstory, how you got here, and maybe a personal anecdote or two about why you do this.
Building great experiences, revolutionize your business. Building great experiences, innovative strategies. Building great experiences, elevate for your customers. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, absolutely. So I fell to earth in a capsule. No, I started back in 2004 with a company called Sell It. And Sell It was a text messaging company. So this is before the iPhone, 4 years before the iPhone came out. And we were providing information on real estate originally. So you text in for information on a house, you'd get back more information. Again, there was no Zillow back then, and then the realtor would get a lead. I realized dealing in that real estate environment is challenging for a lot of reasons. No fault to realtors, but it's just a challenging environment. And I pivoted the company to something bigger. I always wanted to be something bigger. And we started using our text messaging for retail brands. And pretty quickly, actually, we got clients like Marie Claire Magazine, where you could text in for info on products in the magazine. And then we started running campaigns for Abercrombie and Fitch, Toys R Us, Sam's Club, Office Max. We're doing over 1 million text messages a day just for Abercrombie and Fitch when I sold that company in 2012. I had to work for the new owners for 2 years. And then I thought, okay, now what am I going to do? Well, in that time between 4 and 2014, a lot changed. And now not only was Sell It pushing out 1 million texts a day or 2 million texts a day between all clients, but every recipient was receiving 2 million texts a day, right? You're receiving texts and emails and tweets and Slacks and everything else. And I thought, what really stands out amongst all this digital noise and the 135 emails you get a day and all the rest is a handwritten note. And I loved receiving them. I'd put them on display on my bookshelf behind my desk or my refrigerator. And I love sending them. But like anybody else, you get busy and you can't sit down and do it. So I thought there had to be a better way. And that started Handwritten, my next company. So Handwritten today, and our goal is to make sending handwritten notes as easy or easier than sending an email. And we do that through all the automations that I can get into. But today we've got a fleet of about 200 robots. We build them in our facility in Tempe, Arizona. They're laser cut and 3D printed and custom circuitry and all the rest. And then those robots write out 10 to 20,000 notes a day on behalf of our clients. So much different scale, 20,000 versus 2 million. But, it's also it's a total different format. And versus a text message that is quickly read and deleted, a handwritten note is slowly delivered, read, and kept. So it's a very different medium, and it's been an interesting change. But I guess you could say I've been in the messaging space since '04.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize that you had been in kind of the messaging space before
Yeah.
handwritten. So I find it super fascinating because I can already hear folks like listening saying like, wait a second, whoa, robots are handwriting these notes. Like,
Yeah.
where's the personal touch? I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about maybe like the response that people have when they receive those notes. Does it feel like a robot's written it? Does it feel personal? Like, talk to us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
We don't get a lot of feedback. We're kept out of the loop because we're just the provider. And unlike email, unless we include a QR code or something that we track, we don't get a lot of feedback. All we know is our clients keep using us over and over and over again. But third-party data, we hear, like during COVID, customer service departments were sending these out and people were calling into customer service crying. Not to our customer service, but to our clients. And the reason is that, they felt so touched that somebody actually took the time to send them a handwritten note. Do these look fake? If you get a note from Handwritten and we say, was this note written by a robot? You might put it under the scrutiny and determine, 50-50 chance, maybe it's fake. Under any other circumstance, you're not going to know. You're just going to be pleased as punch that somebody took the time to write you a handwritten note. Some of the styles that I've been looking at for the last 11 years, I immediately look at them like, this looks baloney. But our newer styles that I'm not used to, I see it being written on the robot and I cannot believe it. And then if you pair that with a signature or, we can replicate your own handwriting, it's even better. And to the question of, is this, disingenuous? To that, I'd say, well, presidents have been sending out Christmas cards for years with their signature on it that clearly they didn't sign. Back in the day, if you'd write into TWA and you'd have a complaint, you'd get a letter back from the CEO of TWA saying, we're so sorry. Clearly, he didn't sit down and sign that. So this has been going on for a long time. We're just doing it in a way, it goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson. He invented the first signing machine. So this goes back a long way. We're just doing it in a more automated fashion as a service. But I often jest, when it's good enough to send the very best, you send a Hallmark card. When it's almost good enough to send the very best, you do a handwritten note from us.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. Well, I think so. Zooming out a little bit, I wanted to talk about this idea of like personalized experiences and personal touches. We talked, I think, the last time about how, with AI consuming everything, it's going to become, I think, more and more important to have those personal touches because, you can get, you're getting, the deluge of messages and data and information coming at you all day, every day. And it's funny because things like a handwritten note can really mean the world to somebody because it's like so out of the ordinary, right? Like you don't get handwritten notes anymore, right?
Yep.
So I'd love to hear your perspective on just in general, like the impact of a personal touch, how you feel like it elevates the customer experience, and maybe some of the strategies that you all implement to help your customers improve the experience for their customers.
Yeah. Just to give you a quick story. So imagine being a piano tuner and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in this case, and tuning a piano. And then you have an automation set up to send that person a handwritten thank you after tuning their piano. And you only need to do that once a year. That goes out without your knowledge, or, you trust your Zap or whatever to do that. And then a year later, when you go back to tune that piano again, imagine you're surprised that that handwritten note you sent is standing up on the piano. So not only is it opened, not only is it read, but it is put on display on the most personal, often the highest value item in the home, in the fanciest room of the home. This does not happen. And that's what happens for one of our piano tuners that uses us. So there is a deep emotional connection with handwritten notes. We, not just us, but Chewy and other people who's not a client of ours, they send handwritten notes out after a pet passes. We do it for veterinarian practices and all the rest. This is the most personal time to connect. And oftentimes these DVMs, these vets, have such an overwhelming response from their patients, thanking them, thank you for taking the time to do this. Even though it's not your fingers holding a pen to paper, it's still your intention. And it's you doing something that's a little bit different, better, more personal, a way to stand out versus just another AI generated automated email. So people really, especially as emails are becoming more and more, thanks to AI, are flooding everybody all the time, the value of those is just, it's asymptotically diminishing. So, this is really a way to kind of say, hey, we're doing our best to get in touch with you and share our kind words with you.
Yeah, I have been thinking about this idea a lot where the sweet spot between the Hallmark card and the handwritten, right? Like
Yeah.
when do you do the Hallmark, like I'm actually going to sit down and write out this
Yeah.
card? Or like, another example would be, so in my line of work with consulting, it's a very relationship driven business, right? Very relationship oriented. And so I host these executive dinners that are, you know, small round table, kind of 12 or 15 executives. And I've like deliberately decided to not do any of the event like coordination software like an Eventbrite or Luma or any of those. I've been sending like I text people personally and said, "Hey, I've got this dinner. It's coming up on this date. Would love to see you there. By the way, like, congrats on the new work anniversary, or hey, I saw your kids, just got into sixth grade. That's awesome. Whatever, right? Like those kinds of little like things that demonstrate like care and consideration. I'm curious, like how are you all thinking about as time goes on, like you can add those things
Yeah.
that make it feel even
Personal
more premium
snippets.
and personal. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do that right now. So we have bulk upload sheets where you can upload 10,000 people with messages, and you could have a templated message. And one of the parts of that template could be personal snippet, where you say, great seeing you at that dinner, or congrats to your children, or whatever that is. And again, those are your thoughts. You're just automating getting it out. Back to the point of what's better, a Hallmark or this. And of course, I'm joking saying, when it's almost good to send the very best. But the fact is, it's often not between send a Hallmark card and send handwritten. It's between send handwritten or do nothing, right? The alternative, when you have 20,000 donors and you're trying to reach out to 20,000 donors as a nonprofit, you cannot sit down and write a Hallmark card. Or if you do, it's not you, it's your cadre of volunteers that are simply working for the pizza. And there you're dealing with, inconsistency in handwriting, inconsistency, God forbid, there's a spelling error, an error in general, wrong name, and then pizza grease. So, we provide a way for you to scale that outreach. And again, it's not handwritten versus Hallmark. Hallmark should win if you have all the time in the world, but it's handwritten versus nothing, or handwritten versus email, or God forbid, text, or, something like that.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. Like most people, they aren't even they're not sending a handwritten card at all. They're not doing anything personal or any sort of small touches. It's just like, I don't have time. So they just do zero. So I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fascinating to watch new businesses start to spring up over the next couple of years that are kind of founded on that idea. Like, okay, time is precious, but you want to still provide these personal touches because a differentiated experience is what will help your business grow and succeed over time. Because if everybody is doing, the email blasts and the text messages, like what's going to separate you, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to start to see like probably other brands spring up that are, like I'm sure you've seen these boxes that you like open it up and like butterflies pop out and stuff, right?
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
like you can tailor the box and it has the colors are, like your favorite color, and it has candy that's your favorite candy, those kinds of things. Like you'll see more and more of that where people will get really inventive and creative with like, how do we sustainably or scalably deliver these personal touches? You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think you have to do it. I mean, the other thing that we've seen for a bit, and I don't know what's happened to it, but maybe they're still doing it. There's these companies that send out emails, but the email just has an embedded video in it. And sometimes it's fake too. It's like, they're holding up a sign that has your name on it, and that sign has been AI generated or something. But a lot of the time, it is a real video snippet. They're just trying to get in front of you and show, hey, I didn't just send this via an automated email. This is me trying to get my point across to you. So I think that's a very interesting kind of similar service to what Handwritten does. Obviously, it's a different media and all the rest, but that the intention is there.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting thinking about the future and how you like everyone's going to start to probably get skeptical, like, oh, this is probably AI or this is probably like robot generated. How you can start to almost like prove it, like like authenticity guarantee sort of a thing, right? Like, hey, David actually he may not have written this message, but he was the one that like came up with the thing, did it, whatever. Like, I think the trust piece, I've had a couple other folks on the show recently that we talked a lot about the value and importance of trust as we move forward, like trust is currency. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how people do that, like how they verify this is an authentic, genuine, human gesture, not just
Right.
I didn't even think about it,
Yeah, not some ChatGPT copy and paste or something. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the one positive from all this is our children's handwriting could improve because I heard they're not able to turn in typed up book reports anymore because, it's too much of a copy and paste job from ChatGPT. So hopefully
Yeah.
kids will once again learn the value of handwriting and manual work. It'll be a step back a little bit. I mean, I remember when I was in high school having that bubble jet printer and being able to print out my assignments, but now they're going to have to do it all hand again. So it's interesting what people are doing to try to enforce authenticity. And
Yeah.
that's not to say they're not just sitting there and writing verbatim what they see on ChatGPT, but at least they're forced to process it a little bit, eye to hand.
Yeah. Or kids who are rigging up robots to write their papers for them.
Yeah, I guess that could be our next offering. Who knows?
Hey, we'll write your paper for you with the robot hand. Well, I'd love to hear. So, looking at the industry, we've already kind of shared a couple of examples, but
Yeah.
who else is doing this well? Obviously, Handwritten, y'all are doing some really great stuff, but are there brands out there that you think are doing the personal touch customer experience thing really, really well?
Yeah, I think they're in the non-handwritten space and in handwritten space, and I could give examples of how people are doing with handwritten notes. But owning mistakes, I think, is a huge opportunity to build a client for life. And I can give you two examples. One is Handwritten, a client of Handwritten, it's a snack box, and they send these office snacks on a monthly cadence. And if for whatever reason there's a screw up, whether that's a delayed in shipment or the wrong box or whatever, damaged products, they'll send you a handwritten note and some swag and another box. And what they found is the lifetime value of those clients that received the handwritten apology and the other box is actually higher than the lifetime value of clients that never had a bad experience, that never had that win back. So then their solution is just to screw up with everybody and raise all tides, do that. Personally, I'm currently renovating my backyard and I had to buy some barbecue equipment from Barbecue Guys, which is a big online retailer. And some of the products came damaged. The head of customer service called me immediately, and I don't know how they did it, but they had new products on my lawn the next day. And not only that, but then they followed up with me and said, "Did everything come okay this time?" I mean, the fact when somebody owns something, I think is so powerful. It cannot be understated. Now they've got a customer for life with me. I think Barbecue Guys is a terrific organization. So there's a lot of examples of that, but there's a lot of non-examples of that where they always pin the blame back on the consumer or the shipper, because Barbecue Guys doesn't own those trucks, you know what I mean? So it's just really refreshing when somebody says, this is a reflection of us and we're going to do the right thing. So that's been a great experience for me personally, but there's a lot of brands. And I don't think good customer experience means a gimmick. I think it means that honest interaction and being transparent with the customer.
Yeah. I love the like owning the mistakes comment. Like, I think that is exactly right. But in a world where people try to justify away, like, well, I've had this happen, I'm sure you've had as well. Like, if you're dealing with a vendor on eBay or Amazon, and say for whatever reason you get the thing and it comes in, it doesn't fit or it doesn't work or something's broken or whatever. And they're like, well, da 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 da. And like, they make you go through all these hoops just to return this product.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's $15, man. Like, really? Like you're gonna sit here and sweat over $15? But to your point, when you have the inverse of that, where they're like, "Oh, we're so sorry," like, well, they own their mistake. They're like, "We'll make it right," and they send you a new product for $15, right? Sure, they're spending a little bit of money on it, but they have a very high probability of that person who could become a net detractor actually going from like a 4 out of a 10, like I don't recommend this company, they're bad, to like, wow, they went like above and beyond. Like not only did they send me a replacement for the product that was broken, but I also got da 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 da. And like a recent example, like my father-in-law just recently had some work done in his yard, and the company that he's working with, I guess they were just like, they're really busy right now, and they were slower on the delivery timeline than what he had expected or what he had wanted. And so he kind of shared, was like, hey, this took a lot longer than you guys said it would. And the owner was like, without apologized, owned it, whatever. The next day, a crew showed up, and they had originally like seeded and like put like the hay or straw or whatever to like let the grass grow. They just came in and put a whole bunch of sod down. It was probably like a couple $1,000s worth of sod, maybe more, and did it for free. And my father was like, whoa, right? But it's like those
moments.
Yeah. And he's a customer for life now, right?
Yeah, and not only am I a customer now, granted, I don't have to buy that many barbecue sets. I'm not fortunate to have a fleet of houses, but I'm here on a podcast, and you're not the first one. I've done this 2 or 3 times where I'm praising their response, right? So that's free advertising for them, and what's nice is they didn't ask for it. So it's a genuine recommendation. So, things come back. There is a little bit of karma out there, and you just want to do the right thing. Joe Polish, who's a marketing guru, I know there's a lot of marketing gurus out there. He talks about the money back guarantee, that all companies have one. It's just if you're going to market it or not. So what do I mean by this? Like Handwritten, my company, if it used to be, if somebody would screw up, we would give them their money back, but it would be a lot of they'd bark at us, and we'd say, okay, we're giving you your money back. We're sorry. We want you to have a good experience. But we weren't putting it on our website that we offer 100% money back satisfaction guarantee to your money back, right? And so what's the difference? One is you do it because you don't want people screaming at you and leaving bad reviews on G2 or whatever, and you don't get any benefit from it. Or you promote it and you market it and you say, hey, we are proud to offer a money back guarantee. The same result, but one, it builds trust with your clients. And it also, hopefully you get a few less people barking at you because you're like, dude, it's fine. We're sorry you had the bad experience. This doesn't happen very often. Stuff happens. Here's your money back. You know what I mean? But it's just about framing it and putting it front and center as a marketing piece that you offer a money back guarantee.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so being in the service industry, there's a lot of like debate over putting any kind of guarantee on your work, right? Because if you do a project and you've got fixed costs or labor costs that spend, quite high, and you go and you do a project, and then, well, what if the client's not happy? And then now they're asking for us to give them money back, and we just pay for all this payroll. But I think what's interesting, to the same point you're just making, like if you position and frame it as, look, we believe so strongly that we are going to deliver the outcome that you're here for. So much so that we're going to, if you're not happy with it, we'll give you your money back. It's kind of like a bold statement because people are like, well, okay, you really mean business. This isn't just some fly by night, shop.
Yeah.
You are actually, you stand by your work. And I think people don't do that in the service industry because it is a bit more painful when you have to pay the money back, right?
No, 100%. But the thing is, I think people do it. They just do it begrudgingly, and they don't get the benefit of the marketing. So if I worked with you and I paid you a bunch of money, and then it didn't work for me, and I just started calling you and hassling you and saying, Drew, I want my effing money back. Give it back. I'm going to post on Yelp. I'm going to post on G2. I'm going to post on every site. I'm going to create websites. I'm going to do all this and just destroy you. You'll be like, fine, you get your money back. Leave me alone, right? So there you've done it, but you haven't gotten any of the value out of it. So I think you just have to kind of swallow, look, very few people are going to take advantage of this. There have been a few, and we ban them. If they get their money back, we typically ban them after that. They're like, oh, it doesn't work. Okay, we give them their money back. And then they come on the website a month later and do it again. Typically, they're small-time clients. You're just like, you told us this didn't work. Clearly it did work, and you're just a cheapskate. So we just, we ban these customers, and there is risk there and all that. But we just feel the benefit of marketing the guarantee, since we're going to eventually acquiesce anyway, is better than not marketing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's like you can get more value. Both sides can get more value if
Right.
you approach it in the right mindset versus kind of like, to your point, begrudgingly like, oh, I have to pay you back. You keep
Right.
bothering me, right?
Yeah. It's just interesting.
Yeah. So I'll share a couple of examples. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but one that I always go back to is like the Ritz-Carlton, and they are primo when it comes to hospitality and customer service. A lot of the things that they do that are like these personal touches is their frontline workers, which I was one 15 years ago, are all trained and equipped and empowered to look for ways to make the client experience or guest experience great. And you're given, like a per diem essentially that you can go spend on solving guest problems, that you don't have to go ask for a GM's approval. You don't have to go get somebody to like bless it and tell you it's okay. It's just like fix the problem. Like don't go, run up through the food chain and try to get like the managers to sign off on this thing. Like just fix it, And I think it's something that a lot of companies are reticent to do. They like don't trust their employees to make the decisions, which then begs the question, like, why'd you hire them, right? Like, if you don't trust that they're going to make a decision, like, why did you even hire them in the first place? But if you empower your employees, they can make those things right. So in this case, let's say that, like, on your team or my team, any team, you've got a disgruntled customer that thought that they were supposed to get something, didn't get something. Instead of being like, okay, before we give the money back or before we make it right, you need to go and get approval from all these layers of management. No, just make it right, and like that even more amplifies the value because the customer's like, whoa, that was like, I didn't have to go through all kinds of nonsense. It just was solved. Now it's even more likely for them to be a kind of net promoter, tell everybody they know, wow, this was such an amazing experience. They gave me money back right away. And they like, in the case of the Ritz-Carlton, they did all this extra stuff, like they made it just this wonderful time with my family. Like those things are really important and memorable. So I think there's this combination of, like those kinds of guarantees, but also having your employees be empowered to make those kinds of guarantees without going through all kinds of checks and balances or approvals.
Yeah, and I'll give you another hotel example. It's more about training, and also I think to your point, hiring. And I think the issue with hiring is if you make one bad hire, and then that person gets in a hiring role, you're kind of screwed, right? Because then they're going to hire a bunch of people that don't give a damn. But I was at 24 years ago. I was at the Fairmont on Wall Street. I was not paying for it. It was paid for by my job at the time, and very nice hotel. And I'm walking down the hall again, 24 years ago, and I remember this. Walking down the hall, and there was like a maintenance guy, like somebody there to fix a toilet or something, and he's walking the other way. And as I pass him, and I'm walking towards the elevator to go downstairs, as I pass him, he's like, "Hi, sir, how are you?" And he just hits the elevator button for me and keeps walking. And it's interesting that those little things of just, that was very nice. He hit the elevator button for me and kept walking. He wasn't coming out of the elevator; he was just walking by. It's like, how do you train all those little details on how to have such amazing customer service? And it's really a surprise and delight that, I mean, the fact that I remember that 21 years later is just bonkers. But it made that big of an impact, and it didn't cost them a thing. I mean, in training it probably did. It just showed that people are so attuned to your experience all the way to the guy that's fixing a clogged toilet.
Yeah, it's to reference back to the Ritz-Carlton, they have this credo, right, that every employee is kind of like, it's imprinted in your brain. And there's this sort of tag that they say, which is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And there's this idea that, you're not this like lowly inferior employee that's like, on the front lines, just like cleaning toilets. Like you ladder up to this bigger mission of providing great, exceptional experiences for your guests. And I think it has to start from the top, right? Like the people who are setting the vision and direction of the company, who are establishing the culture, have to prioritize and say, like that guy who hit the button on the elevator, like, hey, these are the things that we expect. Like to do well here, like you got to sweat the small stuff and like think about those little moments with customers because those matter really big. Other companies that are like profit, efficiency, you end up with like employees who don't care about the small stuff because they're just like trying to find every pocket of money they can possibly find. And the funny thing is, if you focus on the right inputs, like the guy hitting the button on the elevator, those things, like the score will take care of itself. Like the profits come, the revenue comes because your customers are so enamored with you and your brand and what you stand for that they tell everyone they know, and those customers, bring more customers. But it's like you have to take more of a long view, which a lot of leaders don't take.
Yeah. And I believe with the Ritz-Carlton, there was a case where senior management went to the breakout room where the employees, they have their lunch or do their break. And he's like, this has got to go, because the breakout room was not of Ritz-Carlton standard. And how can your employees, to your point, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen, and maybe I'm confusing Ritz with another, super high-end brand, but how can your employees serve your customers if they're not being served, if they're not being respected? So he or she totally elevated that breakout room experience to the Ritz-Carlton level so that they feel empowered and understand what's on the line.
Yeah, it's I say this quote, it's like happy employees equals happy customers equals happy investors, right? Or shareholders, right? It's this, you can't treat your employees like crap and then expect them to treat your customers great. Like you have to think about, like, ultimately, bottom line, these are still human beings. Treat human beings with respect, empowerment, give them the tools that they need to be able to do their job well, and they will go do it. I think it's like more of the exception that you've got people who just don't care and they don't want to do a good job and they just want to loaf around and not work hard. Like that's like, if you're in an environment and a culture where it's like these are the things that matter, like people typically rise to the occasion. Like it's more and more, I think, the exception that people don't want to try to do a good job. And like you can see those people a mile away. But if you have a culture where it doesn't prioritize those things, then it sort of just festers and breeds this attitude of like indifference and whatever. Like who cares? No one matters. That doesn't matter.
No, I totally agree. I mean, Zappos, Tony Shaw, the founder of Zappos, I was fortunate to experience his work firsthand, but he's famous for when he brings you into the organization, he does the whole culture at Zappos, which I can explain some in firsthand. It's bonkers. But after that 2-week training or whatever, he then offers you $10,000 to leave, because if you're willing to take that 10 grand, you shouldn't be here in the first place. And he's able to keep that culture hot. Rest his soul. But yeah, that's kind of, we try really hard. Now we're a small organization with limited resources, but we try very hard to treat our employees well. And, at the very least, treat them with respect and take their feedback and open door policies. And it doesn't always have to be whining and dining in a Ritz-Carlton environment. It just has to be providing respect and feedback. Like we had an employee that in our all hands, which we have every 2 weeks, she said, why don't we have a vending machine? And I thought, we have free snacks. She's like, yeah, but the free snacks are always gone because people hoard them. So why don't we have so then the next week there was a vending machine in the office. And I think people see that, okay, we're trying to listen to what people want and make people feel empowered and that type of thing. So
yeah. People, I think it's that specific example is like a great one because you heard employee feedback and you did something about it. Just like what we were talking about with customers, where the customers are upset, you're not trying to like dodge it and explain it away. You own it and you're like, yeah, okay, we're going to fix it. That posture of like, we're trying to make it better every day and we might get it wrong sometimes, but know that when we get it wrong, we will do whatever we can to make it right. And I think both on the employee side and on the customer side, that always is a net benefit, because people aren't stupid. People can smell bullshit a mile away, right? They can smell you don't actually care. You're just here to make more money and make more profits. And you're just trying to take advantage of me and my time and my resources. So yeah, it's super important. Well, let's shift gears a little bit as we kind of wrap up the conversation. We've already given a lot of really great practical suggestions for folks listening to implement, tomorrow with their with their companies. What are some other maybe like 1, 2, 3 things that you think would be good for folks to start to try within their organizations to improve the customer and or employee experience?
Well, I think it doesn't require using a company like Handwritten to see the value of a handwritten note. I'm here talking about handwritten with an I, not handwritten with a Y. So what I mean by that is, pick up a piece of paper and a pen and send your top 10 clients or customers handwritten outreach and just see what happens. And if that works, then find a company like Handwritten with a Y and try to grow this. I think there's a lot of value in that. I think doing customer satisfaction surveys are really important. We've garnered a lot of feedback that way, and people like being heard. Those have made a big difference. And then, we try to have members of our management team spend some time fielding customer service calls as well, just so we know the aches and pains that our customers are feeling. Also, it's a very different view that the head of ops has about how well we're doing versus the head of customer service. The head of ops knows that we're sending 30% more cards this month than last month. The head of customer service, all they do is get complaints all day, every day, hopefully not too many, but whatever, there's like one person fielding the line. So there's always bound to be somebody. So, it's about trying to see the other vantage point and see, okay, based on this feedback, what could we do better? And it's been really helpful. It's been very helpful to me personally. I mean, I'm fielding those calls when needed too. So it's hard being that flat of an organization. I had a potential influencer for the nonprofit segment reach out to sales. They wanted an affiliate program. The salesperson offered them something super de minimis and it kind of turned them off. But luckily, they came in touch with me and I said, okay, well, let's develop an affiliate program. I don't know how long it's going to take to do that, but we'll come up with something. So, it's again, just trying to make yourself available and have those interactions.
Yeah. You said something, there are a couple things I want to pull on threads here. One of which is this idea that you've kind of got like these different departments and different metrics for the different departments. And I think a lot of organizations, where the opportunity lies is like starting to like, this is maybe a weird way to say it. It's like, people are like, stay in your lane. And I'm like, don't stay in your lane. Like, go
Correct.
out of your lane, which is kind of what you're talking about. Like this idea that just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you shouldn't get on a customer service call every now and then and listen to real customers and feel the pain, or if you're an operations person, start to like be involved in some of the customer service, customer success stuff so that you can start to say, you start to connect different dots when you're like, wait a second, okay, customers over here are saying this thing. We could probably solve that by changing this operational thing over here, right? Or if, customer success and service they're in sales calls and they're like, wait, okay, there's this disconnect. Let's change this on the service side so that it matches up with the language we're using on the sales side or the marketing side, right? So you start to, like the cross-pollination is so important. Someone told me yesterday, which I thought was like beautiful. They were using like a bee metaphor. And they're like, one of the things that people who are in kind of like the service industry, like consulting and agencies and stuff, they can help cross-pollinate across companies. But I think that's even honestly necessary or needed within organizations. Like you need people who cross-pollinate and say, hey, did you know that ops is doing this over here and sales is doing that over there and customer service is doing this and marketing is doing like we should triangulate, coordinate all these things so it's orchestrated, not just my pillar doing my thing. Yeah, the silos, need to be broken down. So I think that's something that a lot of leaders should start to really think about. And I think in particular now, as the world gets faster and faster, everything is easier and easier, you're going to have to start to think in different ways and connect different dots than you've had to for the last 20 years. I think a lot of leaders are just sort of like, this is what we've been doing. We'll just keep doing the thing. I don't know if that's going to keep working, right?
Yeah, because you'll quickly be replaced, and that's one thing I go on a lot of these podcasts. I talk about the full stop thank you, go on and just thank your client full stop. Because the fact is, if you don't, they can go to Amazon or Alibaba or, have somebody in India or China develop for them, or have ChatGPT write that program for them, whether it's a software program or a customer experience program. So we're all replaceable. So the fact that somebody picked you out of this infinite universe of abundance, that's worth thanking them. And it's worth thanking in a way that doesn't seem like you're trying to get something else from them. It's not thank you, don't forget to refer us, or thank you, don't forget to use this coupon code. It's just thank you, full stop. And I think that's really important. But to the bigger point, people need to organizations need to behave like they're endangered species a little bit more, because Google now is seeing the existential threat of AI. People don't need to go and do a Google search. They can just search on AI and get the answer. So if it can happen to Google, it can happen to you, right? So we all just kind of need to have this, we're all endangered species. We need to behave like that. We need to both be on the offensive, but on the defensive, and then everything in between, and try to ensure we're constantly firing on all cylinders. Handwritten, unlike Sell It, my last company, it's amazing how fast Handwritten has evolved over the last, in the early days back in 2015, 2016, the UPS guy would show up and he'd say, I love coming here because every time I come here, the tables are all in a different order. Everything's moved around every time. And he said that, not us. Now it's so different every week to week on how we do stuff, and using machine vision to QA the notes, and these automated stuffing machines to eliminate error and reduce turnaround time. We're constantly evolving, even though, and a little bit of a humble brag, but I believe we're the market leader by a pretty good margin, but we still know that there's always going to be that guy chasing our tail. And it's important to have that so that you do your job better and better and better. And it takes the entire organization from QA, the person stuffing the envelope, all the way up to the CEO and the head of engineering, head of ops, to make sure that happens. And we all know, that we need to improve.
Yeah. The two things you just said, full stop, thank you, and kind of operate like you're an endangered species is exactly right. I think every leader listening should really take that to heart. Don't assume anything, right?
Yeah.
Well, David, fantastic conversation. Wonderful to have you. Where can folks find you and Handwritten online?
Yeah, so I'm not the biggest social media guy. I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look for David at Handwritten. And it's HANDWRYTTEN. I'm David W., not David A. He's a programmer, nice guy. Feel free to integrate with him or to connect with him as well. Then Handwritten, the company, just go to handwrytten.com, HANDWRYTTEN.com. I highly recommend you click the business link and you request our free samples so you can see for yourself if these pass muster. Or even better, hand them to somebody else and say, what do you think? And don't say they're written by a robot. But those would be the two places you could best connect.
Awesome. And folks, you can find me online, drewburdick.com, and I'm a little bit more active on social media. So Drew Burdick on LinkedIn and everywhere. David, thanks again for being on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
Appreciate it. See ya.